All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me again. Today is okay, so let's put this. All right, so good morning again. So thank you for joining me for this study. I know we're a little bit late, like 7 minutes late, but we can pick it up from where we left last week. So last week we did part 8 of the Shulamite study, the night of the Shulamite. I'm sorry if my voice is not that audible today. I think I've been struggling with the flu, but I think we'll get through this today. So we're doing we're still continuing in the night of the Shulamite, but this is we are going into a different segment in the night of the Shulamite. Remember last week she encountered the daughters of Jerusalem. And the daughters of Jerusalem posed the question to her, and what we're doing in this study is that we're trying to answer that question which was posed to her by the daughters of Jerusalem, whom she told and she charged and told them that she was lovesick. So in this study, what we're going to do is spend time looking at the question that was posed. And the question is very simple in Songs of Songs chapter 5 verse 9. So today we're going to do verse 9 and 10, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time. Remember, these studies can stand alone, but they build upon the other studies that we've been doing. So I'll be making references to the previous study, even the other studies that we have done in this series. So today we're looking at, what is your beloved more than another? That's the question that is posed by the daughters of Jerusalem. So we're going to spend time looking at the daughters of Jerusalem and this question that they are posing to this woman. So I'm reading the Bible now, Songs of Songs chapter 5, and I'm going to start reading verse 9. Verse 9 says, "What is thy beloved more than another, O thou fairest among women?" So they pose this question, what is your beloved more than any other, O thou fairest among women? What is your beloved more than another, that you should charge us? Why is it that you charge us? I charge thee, O ye daughters of Jerusalem. If you see, that's a previous verse. If you see my beloved, tell him that I am lovesick. So in verse 9, they pose a question, what is your beloved, O thou fairest among women? Why do they refer to her to be the fairest among women? We're going to spend time looking at that again today. Okay, so who is asking this question? These are the fair ones. Remember, this Shulamite is not part of the children of. She is not part of the children of Jerusalem. She's a Shulamite. She's an outcast. But she calls upon them. They call her fairest among women, but they are the fair ones. They are the ones who are asking the questions, the daughters of Jerusalem. We'll explore that as we go into the study. Who are the daughters of Jerusalem? And why are they posing this question to this woman? They're asking her the question, and why is it that they cannot see the beloved? Because they're asking because they don't know the beloved. But why is it that they cannot see the beloved? Who is the beloved unto the daughters of Jerusalem? Why is it that they're not acquainted with the beloved to this woman who is the Shulamite? That's another question that we need to ask as we need to answer as we go through this study. So let's begin reading from Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, we're going to read from that great chapter that gives us the picture of the beloved and how he appears to the children of Israel, or the daughters of Jerusalem. And Isaiah chapter 53 verse 2 tells us this. It says, "For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and has a root out of the dry ground. He has no form nor comeliness, that when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we shall desire him." So to them, to the children or to the daughters of Jerusalem, he appears to have no beauty that they should desire him. Why is it that this woman, the Shulamite, says, I am lovesick for him? Why is she being lovesick for somebody that appears to be out of the dry ground, out of the dry root, somebody who does not have the beauty or the comeliness to be desired? And that's the question that we are trying to answer. In Luke, let's look at the book of Luke. Luke chapter 23, verse 28, Jesus speaks to the daughters of Jerusalem. Remember, this is at the time when he's carrying the cross and he's about to ascend the mountain and do a mighty work there. We looked at this verse in the previous studies. In Luke chapter 23, verse 28, it says, "But when Jesus turned unto them," these are the women who are crying for him as he carries the cross, is going and ascending Calvary. He turned unto them and says, "Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and your children." So he says, don't weep for me. Go ahead and start weeping for yourself and your children. Why? Because you have sinned, but you have rejected me, and there's destruction which is coming, and this destruction is going to cause an abomination among you. So Jesus Christ is literally telling them, you have rejected me. Instead of weeping for me as I'm doing this mighty work, but weep for yourselves because of your unbelief. There is destruction which is coming upon you. And he's talking to the daughters of Jerusalem. Who are they asking this question? Remember, the question that we're trying to answer in this study is, who is your beloved more than any other beloved? But who are they asking? These daughters of Jerusalem. Who are they asking the question to? They are asking the Shulamite. The Shulamite, we've been going through trying to unveil and discover who this woman is, who is so much now. She says, I am lovesick for him. She is enamored. She's enraptured by him. She says, I'm so lovesick for him. This Shulamite is the dark one. Okay, she is able to see and describe him, as you see in the next verse that we're going to look at in Songs of Songs chapter 5 verse 10. After they ask a question, she goes ahead in the rest of the verses, she begins to describe him. Listen to what it says in Songs of Songs chapter 5 verse 10. It says, my beloved is white and ruddy. She describes him as white and ruddy. She says the chiefest among 10,000. And this is where we're going to park today because we need to unpack this verse. She describes him as white and ruddy. And that word ruddy is, in the Hebrew, it's the root word of that word is Adam, or red, or the dyed man. You see as we go through the study, right? So why does she describe him in such a beautiful way as being white and ruddy, or fair, or handsome, or to be read and desirable? Why does she describe him like this? The white and ruddy description that is given there is also found in other verses. And this is what we're going to do. Spend time looking at this beautiful description and begin to ask ourselves, can I describe Jesus as this? Because we're talking about Jesus. Ultimately, the whole scripture is a revelation of who Jesus Christ is unto us. So she describes him as white and ruddy. And let's see the other verses that talks about this white and ruddy picture of how she describes him as the chiefest among 10,000. He stands out amongst the 10,000. He's the only one that stands out. He is the most desirable among us all. And she chooses him. Listen to Lamentation chapter 4 verse 7. This is describing, it says, her Nazarenes. Now, Nazarene is a picture that we're going to spend time looking at as well in the study. It says, her Nazarenes were purer than wool, than snow. They were whiter than milk. Now, remember, she just described them as white and ruddy. She said, here it says, they were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than the rubies. They were polished. It says their polishing was of sapphire, the very substance of heaven. So here is being described as a Nazarene. We're trying to answer this question. Who is your beloved? More than any other beloved. O thou fairest among us women. Why is it that you're so lovesick and enchanted by him that you charge us that if we see him, we should tell him that you're actually lovesick for him? So here we're being given a description of a Nazarene who is white and ruddy. White and ruddy. That's the picture of the Nazarene. So here the beloved himself is a Nazarene. Okay, now remember, the question is, who is your beloved? So we're trying to pick out and see who the beloved is, right? So he's a Nazarene. So in Songs of Songs, chapter 5, this is the question that we're trying to answer. In Songs of Songs, chapter 5, verse 10, it says, my beloved is white and ruddy. That word ruddy, like I say to you, it's the red man. It's Adam. It's the word for the red horse, red heifer in the Bible, or the red waters, or the lentils, or the red garments that are described in the Bible. So whenever you see the red, Adam is actually red. The red man, the man that was made out of the dust of the clay, the red man. So here is a picture of who her beloved is. He is the second Adam. He is the one that comes in as the second Adam to create anew, to start where Adam fell. So he's the second estate of our life, and that is who Jesus Christ is, and that is who the beloved is. He's the chiefest among 10,000. He's distinct. He is separate. And in Lamentation, this picture, in Lamentation chapter 4, verse 7, we're being given a picture of a Nazarene. Okay, that's Lamentation chapter 4, verse 7. We just read the verse. So in Matthew chapter 2, let's look at this picture of the Nazarene, because the beloved is a Nazarene. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 23, it says, and he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth. So there's a city which was actually called Nazareth, and that it might be fulfilled that was spoken by the prophets, and that he might be called a Nazarene. This is when Jesus Christ was incarnated as the second Adam, when he came upon this earth to begin where Adam fell, to begin a new state of creation. He came in, but he was a Nazarene, right? In Matthew chapter 26, verse 71, it says, and when he was brought out into the porch, another maid saw him. This is Peter. Remember, Jesus Christ here is going through trial and judgment, and Peter is following from a distance and is avoiding people and all this, and he was brought out into the porch. Another maid saw him and said unto them that were there, it says, this fellow was also with Jesus of Nazareth. So Jesus was called a Nazarene. So when we're talking about the beloved being a Nazarene, we are talking not about just Solomon, the figure, but we're talking about Jesus, because Solomon was outplaying or role-playing the life of Jesus. This is the picture that we're given. Remember, the Bible is a testimony of Jesus. Listen to what it says. So we're trying to answer the question, who is your beloved more than any other? In Numbers chapter 6, this picture of a Nazarene, in Numbers chapter 6, verse 10, it says, and this is the law of the Nazarite, when the days of his separation are fulfilled. So there's a separation, there's a distinctiveness to a Nazarite. A Nazarite takes upon an oath, and then they go through this. When the days of their separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought unto the door. So when he has done his work as a Nazarene, he's brought unto the door, and we know what the doorway represents. It represents judgment. He's been brought in before the Father. And this is the picture of the end time that we're living in. If you look at Daniel chapter 8, it talks about Daniel chapter 7 and 8, it talks about how one who is like the Son of Man is being brought before the Ancient of Days to the door of the most holy place, and there is this revelation that is given. That's in Daniel. But here we're being told that when the days of separation shall come to an end, in Numbers chapter 6, verse 13, he shall be brought unto the door. This is the hour of his vindication. This is the hour of his judgment. After he has been separate as a Nazarene, he is brought in for the vindication of the hour of his judgment. And in Revelation chapter 14, we're being told of the three angels' message. And the first angel in verse 6 of chapter 14 says, fear God, for the hour of his judgment has come. This is the hour of his judgment. So we're still talking about the Nazarene. This is the picture that we're given of our Savior Jesus. Jesus is a Nazarene. He's the separate one. The days of his separation come to an end. And then he's been brought forth. It says, out of the tabernacle of the congregation. So he's the separate one. He is the undefiled one. Continuing looking at this picture of who this beloved is. Because they have posed the question. They don't know who Jesus Christ is, but they are the daughters of Jerusalem. But this estranged woman, this Shulamite, who is not an Israelite, who is so much in love with the beloved, must give a description of who the beloved is. And she says, my beloved is white and ruddy. He's the chiefest among 10,000. In Hebrews chapter 7, verse 28, look at this picture. This, you must begin to tie these things in with the end time picture of the time that we're living in and the work that Jesus Christ is doing in the most holy place. Look at what Hebrews chapter 7 verse 26 says, for such an high priest became us. This is a picture of who Jesus Christ became. He is the high priest in the most holy place today, interceding and mediating for us. He says, for such a high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, and separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens. This is who this Nazarene is. So even when Jesus Christ is administering in the most holy place, he is still the separate one. The one who is undefiled, separate from sinners. The one who's been made higher than the heavens itself. So in the context of the Day of Atonement, when Jesus Christ began his work in the most holy place, 1844, he is still the Nazarene picture. What is he doing there as a Nazarene? What is he doing for us? It's the work of separation. Listen to what it says in Psalms. In Psalm 69, verse 9 and 10, it says, Psalm 69, verse 9 and 10. It says, for the zeal of thine house has eaten me up, and the reproaches of them that reproach thee have fallen upon me. So while he's in the most holy place doing a work, the reproaches of his people have fallen upon him. Verse 10, it says, and I wept and chastised my soul with fastings. That was to my reproach. So what Jesus Christ is in the most holy place, he is doing a work of taking upon the burden of his woman, or the blackness of his woman, as a Nazarene. He says here, it says, I wept and chastened my soul. So there's something that he's doing that relates to his soul. And I'm going to read to you now from the Spirit of Prophecy that gives us a beautiful picture of the Nazarene's work. In the most holy place, in the context, remember, this is all in the context of the Day of Atonement, the time that we're living in today. Listen to this. This is from the Spirit of Prophecy, Faith That I Live By, page 46 to 48. Listen to this beautiful picture of what Jesus Christ is and is doing in the most holy place for us. It says, Christ was God essentially and in the highest sense. So we're dealing with who is the beloved. He is God in the highest sense. He says he was with God from all eternity, God over all, blessed forever. He says the Lord Jesus Christ, the divine Son of God, existed from eternity, a distinct person, yet one with the Father. This is who the beloved is. One with the Father, existing in his own existence, having existence in himself. It says he was the surpassing glory of heaven. The very glory of heaven is him. He was the commander of the heavenly intelligence, and the adoring homage of angels he received by himself as his right. So the angels would worship him. It's his right. He is the creator. You can only worship one who is the creator. And this is who Jesus Christ is. Continuing, it says, he was equal with God, infinite and omnipotent. So this is the picture of who the beloved is, that they, the daughters of Jerusalem, could not see. Continuing, it says, but he humbled himself. This is now when he became a Nazarene, separate, to become separated to do a work for God. It says, but he humbled himself and took upon mortality upon himself. That was what he took when he came upon this earth. It says, as a member of the human family, he was mortal. But as God, he was the fountain of life to the world. My friends, this is who Jesus Christ is. When he came upon this earth, he became mortal. But as God, he was the fountain of the world, of life to the world. Not just the earth, but the entire universe. He could, in his divine person, ever have withstood the advances of death and refused to take upon its dominion. So Jesus Christ would have said, well, death is not going to have any power over me, because I'm God. He could have done that. But as a Nazarene, one who's been separated to do a particular work, what did he do? Continuing, he says, but he voluntarily laid down his life. That's the snapshot of a Nazarene. He separates himself and voluntarily chooses to go through death, that in doing so, why does he do so? That he might give life and bring immortality to life, to light. This is the work of a Nazarene. This is what Jesus Christ came to do as a Nazarene. Continuing, it says, he bore the sins of the world and endured the penalty. The penalty for the wages of sin is what? Death. He endured death. He didn't enjoy death. He endured it. Why? Which rode upon him like a mountain upon his divine soul. We just read that from the book of Psalms. That he chastised his soul. And when he chastised his soul, he allowed his divine soul that the sins of the whole world should roar upon him like a mountain. This is the work that he has embarked upon himself, to bear the blackness or the sinness of the world. Continuing, it says, he yielded up his life as sacrifice. This is the life of a Nazarene. He sacrificed, abstaining and allowing his soul and not accepting homage from angels. It says that man should not eternally die. Why is he being a Nazarene? Why has he been this separate one? Why has he been this chastised one? So that he can bring immortality to life, and so that man should not eternally die. He died not through being compelled to die. He was not being forced to die, but his own free will. That's a picture of a Nazarene. The Nazarenes chose that life, and Jesus Christ, out of his free will, the ultimate Nazarene, the only true Nazarene, the one who is not drunk with the wine of Babylon, he chose out of his free will. This wonderful mystery, the incarnation of Christ, when he became the ruddy one, the second Adam, this incarnation of him and the atonement that he made must be declared to every son and daughter of Adam, the first Adam. See, the first Adam has fallen, but we have a second Adam, and this message needs to go to every human being, that we have a second Adam who stands before God today as our eternal intercessor. He stands in between life and death. We will die eternally if we don't have this beloved, who is more than any other beloved. Buddha cannot equal this beloved. Muhammad cannot equal this beloved. This beloved is different. He is equal with God. It says of the first Adam. We are of the first Adam, and God has brought in this second Adam through his incarnation. So the Nazarene bears the reproach of his people, of his woman. He bears the blackness. Now remember, the Shulamite says, I am black. And he is the one that bears a blackness, that she identifies herself as a sinner. So listen to Lamentation. Let's go back to Lamentation. Let's spend time looking at Lamentation, because Lamentation begins to present to us the picture of this Nazarene. Listen to what it says in Lamentation chapter 7, verse 4 and 8. It says, her Nazarenes were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy than in body than the rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. And we talked about sapphire being the very substance of heaven. The very substance of when God came down. If you go back and look at the paved way that was opened when God came down at Sinai in Exodus chapter 20 and 19, there when he came down, the paved way where he made his people, it was paved with sapphire. So that is the polish, the very substance of heaven, who this Nazarene is. In verse 8 of Lamentations chapter 4, it continues, says, their faces is blacker than coal. This is the picture of him taking upon the blackness of this woman who is black. So he takes upon her blackness so that he can give her the comeliness. Continue, it says, they were not in the streets, their skins cleave to their what? To their bones. It is withered, it has become as a stick. So God has to go through this process as a man of sorrow, rejected and despised of all. And here it says, their skin, the Nazarene. Now remember, it talks about the Nazarene in the plural, but basically it's talking about the one Nazarene who is Christ himself. It says their skins cleave to their bones. Now the bones itself, it's the etzem, it's the substance of life. Now you see the essence of this, the leanness that is being presented here, that they are lean, their skin is clinging to the bones. Why is it talking about this leanness? You see as we go into this study. So that's in Lamentation. So here he bears a blackness. He bears the blackness, the shame of this woman, and then he covers her with his whiteness, with his righteousness. She is no longer naked, but now he's covering her with his whiteness. So in the end time, how does God come to his church? He comes in as a Nazarene, the separate one. That's how Jesus Christ comes to his church. I come as a Nazarene. I'm doing, as I'm in the most holy place, I am the separate one, the undefiled one. And I'm standing there because your sins have rolled upon my soul like upon my divine soul like a mountain. I am bearing the sins of the whole world in the most holy place, especially the sins of my people, because my people are the ones that burden me with their sins. So he comes as a Nazarene. We looked at Revelation last time. I think we did the study, the previous study. We looked at Revelation. As I was about to end, I think I dwelt looking at Revelation chapter 10. So we explored this last time. We looked at how that angel that comes in. Let's read Revelation chapter 10, this one. We'll spend time looking at these verses because they begin to review to us who this one is. Revelation chapter 10, this one. Listen to what it says in Revelation chapter 10, this one. It says, and I saw another. This is the another. This is the different one. This is the ultimate one. This is the picture of the Nazarene. This is the beloved who is more than any other beloved. Listen to what it says. And I saw another mighty angel who came down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and the rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as of the face of the sun. This is the word white. When she says he's white and ruddy, this is the sun expression. And his feet are the pillars of fire. This is the description of a Nazarene. So this is the picture of the covenant-keeping God who comes down. He comes down as an angel. He comes down as a messenger. This is because he wants to reveal himself unto the people. This is the beloved that takes upon the work of the covenant. He wants to establish a covenant with his people, with this woman who's going through a bittersweet experience. So in Revelation chapter 10, we're being given the mighty angel that comes down. In all the Bible, if you go back in the Bible and look at the times when there's a mighty angel that comes down and the people, look at the story of Samson. when Manoah and his wife saw the angel of the Lord, they said, we're going to die because we've seen the angel of the Lord. That angel, when he manifests himself as an angel, it is God that takes upon a message to bring about the birth of somebody who's going to be born in a unique way. Samson was born in a unique way, and Samson was nothing but role-playing in the uniqueness of who Christ is going to be. And Samson was a Nazarene, and Jesus Christ was a Nazarene. This is the picture of who he is. Okay, now let's see this in the end-time picture from Daniel. When he comes, when Jesus Christ is doing his final work in the most holy place, who is he being represented as? And my argument to you is that Jesus Christ is still the Nazarene. He's about to be brought to the door. Let's look at Daniel chapter 8. Now, Daniel chapter 8 is what gives birth to the final movement that is going to bear a message to this world. Without Daniel chapter 8, Adventism does not exist. So in Daniel chapter 8, verse 13, we read 13 and 14, but we're going to spend time looking at 13. Here it says, listen, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said unto that certain one. Now, that certain one, that's the word pamoni in the Hebrew. The word pamoni. So he's speaking to that certain one, and that certain one is the unique one. In the margins, it says the wonderful numberer, or the one who is wonderful or different. Listen, it says, then I heard a holy one speaking unto another holy one. Now, this is a certain one. Remember, the question we're trying to answer in this study is, who is your beloved more than another beloved? So what makes him unique? So there's this certain one, the Pamoni, who is speaking, and the question is, how long will the vision be concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation? Please listen to me. We're going to talk about desolation in this study. Listen, please follow me clearly, because it will begin to review what is happening to God's people now. It says, how long shall we be both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? So that certain one is the pamoni in the Hebrew. And the root word means what? What does it mean when it says he spoke unto the certain one? It means distinct, marked out, separate. It means also to be distinguished from all. So Jesus Christ, while he is in heaven, is that certain one who is the pamoni, or the wonderful numberer, who needs to answer, what shall be the end of the sanctuary being trodden underfoot? How long is it going to be? He's the only one who can number how long. You remember David numbered the children of Israel, and then there were the plagues that came in. And God says, you're not called upon to number Israel. I number Israel. I am the one that can separate what's going on there. So he does a distinct work of marking out. He's the marked out one. Even his work is a marked out work. It's a distinct work that God did for us by giving us Jesus. It's a separate work. It's distinctions, guys. He begins to draw the distinctions, the marked out ones. This is holy. This is not holy. He begins to separate things as he's doing his pamoni work in the most holy place. He does a distinct marked out work. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 14, listen to what 8 verse 14 it says. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So that cleansing work, the word cleanse is zadik. It's the word for righteousness. It's the word for vindication. The sanctuary is vindicated in the end time by the righteousness of that Satan one. It's not vindicated by the righteousness of his people, no, or the institution of God's people, but it's vindicated, it's zadik, it's the work of justification. It's vindicated by the mighty work of Jesus Christ in the most holy place, who has immortalized Calvary. And what he's doing in the most holy place is that he's administering a finished work there, the cleansing work of Calvary in the most holy place. So he does that distinct work. Let's pursue this even further. Let's begin to see what's the distinct work that he does. Let's look at this word pamoni when it pops up in the Bible. How does it pop up? And what's the situation there? Let's begin to survey the land of this Pomoni work that he does, because it's very essential to tell us about the work of Jesus Christ in the most holy place during this time that we're living in today. In Exodus chapter 8, verse 22 to 23, it says this. It says, and I will sever the cutting, the severing, and I will sever in that day, remember, the day of atonement. I will sever in the day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end that thou shalt know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. Now let's go back and look at this scenario. This scenario begins to present to us the mighty work that Jesus Christ, God himself, severed or did in Egypt during the plagues. Hello, we're talking about the plagues that are going to come. God says, I'm going to do a severing work. He's the only one that can do that severing work of separating. It says, I'm going to do the severing work where my people who are in Goshen, the rejected land, Goshen, the filthy land, those that have seen themselves to be dark and rejected, what am I going to do for them? I am going to sever that no swarms of flies shall come there. So when the Egyptians were under the swarms of flies, God's people were without the flies. So God drew the distinction. So that word sever, it's his work of Pomoni. He separates. Listen to what it says in 23 of Exodus chapter 8. It says, and I will put a division between my people and thine people. Tomorrow thou shalt be given this sign. So God, when he is doing a work, he creates a work of distinctions, of separating. This is what it is. This is what it is. This is what he did in Egypt during the plagues. God's people were safe without the swarms of flies and all this, while the Egyptians who rejected, remember the question or the daring statement that Pharaoh makes to Moses when Moses went in and says, let my people go, let them go and Sabbath, let them go and rest, let them go and find their rest in the wilderness. What did Pharaoh say? He said, who is this God? When Pharaoh was full, he says, who is this God that I should obey him? I don't know who this God is. Now, this is a very similar question that these children of, or the daughters of Jerusalem are posing to the Shulamite. They're saying, who is your beloved more than any other beloved? Oh, you who are called fairest among women. That is mockery. They're mocking her. Who is your beloved that you should charge us? So God's people begin to adopt a mindset of who? Pharaoh. And what happened to Pharaoh? God says, well, I'm going to do wonderful things. And as I'm doing the work of Pomoni, brothers and sisters, please listen to me. God says, as I am doing the work of Pomoni, what is going to happen? Two groups of people are going to be formed. There's a distinction that I'm going to form. God will finally have his people that are not affected by the floods, but that are not affected by the 7 last plagues. God is going to have his people. And while he does this, the devil is going to have his people. He's going to have his Pharaoh people, whose hearts will be hardened as the message is going out. Their hearts, as he's doing a wonderful work in the most holy place, their hearts will be hardened. So I thought of bringing context to this. Okay, in Exodus chapter 9, verse 4, continuing looking at this word Pomoni when it appears in the Bible. Here it says, Exodus chapter 9, verse 4, it says, and the Lord shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of who? Egypt. And there will be nothing, and they shall nothing die of all that is of the children of Israel. So God says, listen, those that have come under my pillar as my children, those that have accepted my umbrella as I am the Israel, and they take upon my name as Israel, what is going to happen when the plagues fall? Their cattle shall be safe, while the other cattle are going to die. God begins to do the Pomoni work, to separate work. the separation work. In Psalms, listen to what Psalms chapter 4, again, the word appears in Psalm chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 3, it says, but know that the Lord has set apart him that is godly for himself. The Lord will bear when he calls upon him. The Lord is going to hear him when he calls upon him. And this is the separate one. This is the distinct one. This is the Nazarene one. And God's people are called upon to look to the Nazarene who is Jesus Christ. God has set him apart for that work. Listen to what Psalms, again, that word set apart is the same word for pomoni, the certain one, the one that does that distinctive work to separate, to know exactly how to separate. Listen to what Psalms 17, verse 7 says. It says here, listen. It says, show thy marvelous, that word marvelous, it's a beautiful work that it does. Show thy marvelous kindness, O thou that saveth by thy right hand them that put their trust in thee, from those that rise against them. So God is going to do a marvelous work of saving his people. Listen to what Psalm says. Continuing, we're reading Psalms 139 verse 14. It says, I will praise thee. Remember, Psalms 139 is a messianic chapter. It's about the Messiah. It's about the Messiah himself. It's about the anointed himself. It's not about you and me. We like to read Psalms 139 verse 14 as if it's about us. Because we are so narcissistic that we can't see Jesus from these verses. We just see us. We want to feel, oh, we are so special. But let's disqualify man and let's qualify Jesus, because we're about to draw the distinctions. Remember, we're living at the time when he's working in the most holy place, and we need to draw the distinction. This is most holy, this is not holy. Man is not holy, Jesus Christ is holy. Listen to what it says in Psalms 139 verse 14. It says, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That word fearfully and wonderfully made is the pomoni. Marvelous are thy works, that my soul knoweth right well. This is the Messiah. This is the Messiah. This is him who is the Messiah. Listen to what it says. Let's go to Isaiah 9, verse 6. Here is the trump of the coming of the second Adam, the one who is ruddy, right? Listen to what it says in Isaiah 9, verse 6. It says, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. The government shall be upon his shoulders. His name shall be called Wonderful, Pelam, Pomoni. His name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, the Solomon. Peace, Shalom, Solomon. So here is a beautiful picture of who we have been given. This is who the beloved is. Who is thy beloved? More than any other, the wonderful, the pomoni, the one who does the distinctive work. This is who the beloved is. Psalms 24, listen to what Psalms 24 says. Psalms 24, we're going to read verse 8, 10, and 10. Who is this King of glory? Remember, he is the King of glory. We like to receive glory. We like to be praised. We like to be seen as the superstars and all this. But there is this King of glory. He says, who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. The Lord, mighty in battle. He just won. He's walking into heaven. He's overcome by dying on the cross of Calvary. Now he enters on the two-leaf gates of heaven, and when he enters there, the angels see him and they say, who is this King of glory that walks in? For the first time, he walks in as a unique figure. It says, the Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord strong in battle. Verse 10, it says, who is this King of glory? He is the Lord of hosts. He is the King of all glory. Selah. And pause and think about these things. There is no man that should take glory to himself. There is no church that should take glory upon himself. We rob God out of his glory. And God says that will be your distraction. God says, I share my glory with no one. I am the King of glory. I should be glorified, says God. Listen to what Isaiah 63 verse 1 says, who is this that cometh from Edom? He is from Edom. Edom, the enemies of God, Adam. It says, with dyed garments, the red garments, the robber, the ruddy that we talked about. He's white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. This is him with dyed garments from Buzan. This is he that is glorious. This is that is glorious in his apparel, in his traveling, in the greatness of his strength. Who is this that travels in the greatness of his own strength? Nobody can do it. Nobody can go into the heavens and walk in there as a man glorified. Only this one who is different, who is come from Edom, from crushing his enemies, who is won from Calvary. This is him. It says, I speak in righteousness and mighty to save. That's what he's done. In John, let's read John 14. We're looking at who this beloved is. Who is he? Who is your beloved more than any other beloved? You ask the question, you must be ready to know. So God gives the answers. In John, listen to what John says. In John 12, verse 34, it says, the people answered him. They have heard out of the law that Christ abideth forever. And thou sayest, the Son of Man must be lifted up. Who is this Son of Man? Listen, when Jesus Christ was here, he was being confronted over and over. Who are you? Like, you're born out of wedlock? Who are you? Like, who this Son of Man that you talked about? Listen to what Psalms 24. Going back to Psalm 24, the answer is given in Psalm 24, the 7 to 10. It says, lift up your head, O ye gates, lift them up, ye everlasting doors. The King of glory shall come in. He is the King of all glory. Who is the King? Who is this King of glory? He is strong and mighty. He is the Lord and strong in battle. Lift up, O ye head, O ye gates, and lift them up, O ye everlasting doors. The King of glory shall come in. And verse 10, it says, who is this King of glory? He is the Lord of hosts, the King of all glory. Psalms 45. Let's read Psalms 45, verse 2 to 6, describing who this beloved is. Verse 6, so read 45, verse 2 to 6, and then we'll read 8 to 9, and we'll read 11 and 17. Let's form this picture. It says, thou art fair than the children of men. There's nobody who is fair than the children of men, than Jesus Christ is fair than the children of men. It says, grace is poured into thy lips, grace, undeserved. It says, therefore God has blessed thee forever. There's only one that has been blessed. And we are blessed in him. Outside him, no blessing. Outside him, no receiving the Holy Spirit. The one who is the anointed one. It says, get thy sword upon thy thigh. That's a picture of meekness. God can destroy, but his getted his sword upon his thigh. It says, almighty, or most mighty. He is the most mighty. If there is one who is the most mighty, it's him. It says, with thy glory and thy majesty, and in thy majesty ride prosperously, because of truth and meekness and righteousness. It says, thy right hand shall teach thee terrible things. Thy arrows are sharp in the hearts of the king's enemy. We are the king's enemies. We need to receive the arrows that come from the chastisement that come from the watchers, whereby thy people shall fall under thee. They will fall under you to worship you. It says, thy throne, O God. This is talking about Jesus. Read Hebrews chapter 1. This is where Paul is quoting from. He's quoting from this is, thy throne, O God, is an everlasting forever and ever. The scepter of thy kingdom is the right scepter. Verse 8 of Psalms 45, it says, and all thy garments smell of myrrh. We talked about the myrrh. Smell of myrrh and aloe and cassia, and out of the ivory places, out of the most holy place, the ivory places, whereby they have made thee glad. You see, in the most holy place, in heaven, everyone else there is glad around Jesus. Everything else centers and revolves around him. The wheel within the wheel that moves around in Ezekiel, it's talking about him. That's another study. It says, listen to what it says in verse 9. This is the king's daughters were among the honorable women, and upon thy right hand did stand the queen in gold of Ophir. This queen that stands as this woman in the gold of Ophir. What is this gold of Ophir? Remember, the word Ophir appears in the Bible so many times. So I was asking myself, what is this gold of Ophir that she stands in? She stands upon the right hand in the gold of Ophir. Remember, gold in the Bible is faith, but the Ophir, it's one of the sons of is Jotan? Yes, Jotan. One of the sons of Jotan, whose name means to diminish or to be less or to be nothing or to be black. So the gold that has been tried and diminished to nothing, they only have the faith of Jesus, not their faith, but the faith of Jesus. That's the gold of Ophir that has been tried. And God says she stands in that gold. Romans chapter 5 verse 1 says, now being justified by faith, the faith of Jesus, we stand. What makes us to stand in the end time? Justification by faith. This mighty work of the separate one, the distinct one. We're living in a generation where we don't want distinctions. Everyone else is male, everyone else is female, right? This is the spirit of the age. Everybody else can do whatever. Pastors, women can be pastors. This is the spirit of the age. This is the zeitgeist of the age, as the Germans call it. The zeitgeist, the spirit of the age. No distinctions. Everything else is mingled up and all this. But we're living at the time where God wants to draw the distinctions. You are a man, you are a woman. This is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be a woman. He draws the distinctions. It's a testimony against the spirit of the age. The God of Ophir. Verse 11 says, listen, so shall the king greatly desire thy beauty. Why? Because she's gone through the gold of Ophir. She's gone through the purification. She's gone through, and the king begins to desire her beauty. Remember, her beauty is the comeliness that he puts upon her. Ezekiel chapter 16 tells us that he puts the beauty upon her. And what happens when he puts beauty upon her? It says, for he is thy Lord. He is your Lord, is your husband. And worship him thou. Bow before him. He says, and I will make thy name to be remembered in all generations. All generations, just like Mary, the prostitute Mary. Mary Magdalene. When Jesus Christ saw her, when she did that mighty work of anointing him, that was faith. Listen, it says, thy name will be remembered. Let's read about Mary just a little bit, talking about Mary, right? She was a prostitute, but she was amongst the honorable ones, among the one that loved God so much. Listen to what it says about Mary. In Mark chapter 14, verse 9, it says, verily I say unto you, this is what Jesus Christ is saying, whatsoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the world, this also, what this woman has done, shall be spoken of in memorial of her. What she did there by anointing him and breaking the alabaster box before him and getting her glory and putting it down to the dust to wipe his feet. She is prostrate as nothing. And she accepts him as the anointed one, the Messiah one. That is what God's people are about. That's what Mary did there. She broke everything for him. I wish we were like Mary, the prostitute. We like our heroes in the Bible. We can talk about, oh, I want to be like David. I want to be like this. Nobody wants to talk about Mary, right? Oh, the prostitute. But God says, my people, I've got a whore's prostitute, a whore's forehead, They have a forehead, the mindset of a whore. That's what he says. We did that in the previous study. I don't want to go back to that study because it was cutting. So he's the chiefest among 10,000. She says that in Songs of Songs, chapter 5, verse 9. She says, he is ruddy, he is white, he's the chiefest among 10,000. He stands out amongst the 10,000. He's the only one that stands out. So in Hebrews, let's read Hebrews. Because they ask a question, and their question is, who is your beloved? O thou fairest among women. That's mockery that they offer to her because they were considered to be the fair ones. You see as we go. He's the chiefest among 10,000. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, and then we read 8 and 9. Verse 5 it says, "For unto which of the angels did he at any time say, Thou, my son, this day have I begotten thee? Unto which of the angels did he say that?" That's a question which is posed. "And again, I will be to him as a father, and he shall be to me as a son." There is no angel that he ever said that to. He says, and again, when he bringeth in the first begotten of the world, he saith, "Let all the angels of God worship him." He is the chiefest among 10,000. He is the one that God says, "You're my son, my only begotten son." So let all the angels worship him. But unto the Son he saith, "Thy throne, O God, is forever. Our scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom. Thou hast loved righteousness and hates iniquity." And then it says, "Wherefore God, even thy God, has anointed thee with oil of gladness above thy fellows." He is the chiefest among 10,000. Buddha cannot match up. Muhammad cannot match up with Jesus, above everybody else. He's above his fellows. He's the King of glory, of all glory. He's the song of all the songs that I ever sang, all the love songs you've ever heard. They are all but stolen from him. All the love songs that we give to our beloved. God says, "That's all me. Everything belongs unto me." Like Paul Washer once said in one of his sermons, he said something beautiful that has always stuck with me. He said, listen, when Jesus Christ comes, he comes and he says, "This is mine, 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 mine." Everything is his. Everything is his. He is the King of glory. He stamps upon that angel that comes down and then puts his feet on the earth and on the waters, on the rivers and all this. He claims territory. He says, "This is my place. This is where I belong." And every demonic activity is exorcised when he comes in. Jesus takes place. He says, "This is my place. This is my house." The minions that are in this world today, the rich and the elites and whatever they're going on with their coronavirus and trying to control the world and all this, and they think, well, we're in charge now. We can move the world by saying things. God says, "I'm coming. Cyrus is coming. And when I come, I claim this as mine and you will be destroyed." Jesus is coming. Listen to what it says in Isaiah, picturing him as the chiefest among 10,000. In Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1, we read 1, 3 to 4. It says, "And I walked in," he walks in. This is what happens. This is the amazing picture that we're given of this beloved in heaven. Listen to what it says. It says, this is the reality of who Christ is in heaven. This is the same Christ that we play around with. We play, Jesus, and all this. This is the same one. Listen to what it says in Isaiah. It says, "In the year that King Hosea died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon his throne, high and mighty and lifted up, and his train filled the temple." What happened when he filled the temple? Listen to what it says. "And one cried unto another, saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." The Lord of hosts is Jesus. It says the whole earth is filled with his glory. It says the poles of the doors were moved at the voice of him that cried out into the house, and the house was filled with smoke. Nobody could bear the presence of him when he is revealed as the Lord of hosts, the Lord. And when Isaiah saw this in glory, he says, I'm done. I am nothing. I am nothing. I come from a people of unclean lips. I am done. I've seen the Lord and I am going to die. He sees the one who is the separate, distinct, the Nazarene one who walks in. This is the picture we're given. Another picture is given in heaven about Jesus. Listen, in Revelation chapter 4, there's 3 to, we read Revelation chapter 4, there's 1 to 3, and then we read 8 and 9. He says, after this is John speaking, I looked and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were the trumpet talking to me. It says, come up hither and I will show thee things which must come hereafter. And immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was set up in heaven, and one sat on the throne. This certain one that sits on the throne is the Pomoni. It is Jesus. It is the beloved. It is the Nazarene. It is the mighty angel in Revelation chapter 10. And he that sat upon it looked like jasper, like sardine stone, and there was a rainbow around the throne. And his sight was as emerald. And the four beasts, each of which had 6 wings about him, they were full of eyes, they were full of intelligence and knowledge and all this. It says, and they rest not day and night in the presence of Jesus. When they see him, they rest not day and night, saying, holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. This is Jesus. It says, and when these living, the beast that gave glory and honor and gave thanks to him that sat upon the throne, who was living forever and ever. They say this is what they say. It says, thou art worthy, O God, to receive glory and honor and power. This is who Jesus Christ is. And then it says, it continues, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure you have created all these things. These are for his pleasure. Everything has been created. All glory, the one who is worthy, it's him. This is the picture that we're given of Jesus, the same Jesus that we play with. In heaven, he receives all this homage, this praise. You see, the daughters of Jerusalem could not see him for who he was. In reality, they rejected Jesus. Israel of old, ancient Israel rejected, including current Israel. Israel there and all this as a nation and all this still waiting for a Messiah that already came, rejected him. And Jesus speaks to this reality, this rejection, this sad reality of God's people rejecting him. Listen to what he says in John 12. In John 12 verse 28. John 12 verse 28. Here it says in John 12 verse 28 and 30, and then we read 32, then we'll go and read 39 to 40. Listen to what it says. God, he says, this is what Jesus Christ speaks. He says, Father, glorify thy name. Then a voice came from heaven saying, I have glorified both it and will glorify it again. Verse 30 says, and Jesus said, he says, this voice did not come because of me. Did not come because of me. But for your sake it came. Verse 32, and if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself. Now listen to what 39 to 41 says. It says, wherefore, therefore, they could not believe. They could not believe because, it says, wherefore, they could not believe because Isaiah again speaks. This is what Isaiah said. Listen to what Isaiah said. Isaiah again speaks. It says, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts. Again, go back to what I talked about Pharaoh and how God hardened his heart. What happened to this? Why were their eyes blinded? Did God just do that for the sake of wanting for them to be blind? Listen to what it says. It says, harden their hearts, lest they should see with their eyes, and lest they should understand with their hearts, and turn unto Jesus, so that they shall be healed, so that he can heal them. So these things Isaiah was speaking when he was in glory. Remember, this is Jesus quoting Isaiah. He's quoting Isaiah chapter 6 about how God is going to blind these people and harden their hearts, lest they could see and listen. And he's talking to the Jews while they're rejecting him as the Savior. He's speaking to his people. Do you think the Jews of that time were far much more better as God's people than they? That we have a full understanding, we are all okay now. as a Christian body, as a remnant even, we are so much okay that we are not in danger of being blinded? Listen, Isaiah is talking about these things when his glory and he spoke to him. Listen to what Isaiah, let's go back. Let's go to what Jesus Christ quotes, right? We want to quote Jesus. Jesus is quoting Isaiah. So we want to go to Isaiah and see exactly the thoughts that Jesus Christ was bringing out from the book of Isaiah. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 6, this 8, 9, and then I think we'll go up to 11. Isaiah chapter 6. Listen to what it says in Isaiah. This is from this 1 to 6 and 7. Isaiah has seen the Lord. He has said, I am nothing, I am undone. And God says, listen, this is who you are, but I'm cleansing you to do a work. This is what he says. Listen to Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. After that glorious revelation, he says, also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, who shall I send? Who will go for us? So after being cleansed and going through, the voice of the Lord comes and says, who am I going to send? And then he says, here I am, send me. After the cleansing, Isaiah goes and says, here I am, send me. In verse 9 it says this, listen. And it says, go. And he says, go and tell these people. This is a specific people. This is God's people. Listen, and tell these people, hear ye indeed. They hear you, they will listen to you, but they will not understand. They will see you indeed, but they will not perceive. There's a difference between seeing and perceiving. A lot of people are seeing, but they do not perceive what they see. So God is saying, listen, you want to go? Go. Go tell these people. They're going to hear you, but they will not understand. They will see you, but they will not see you. In verse 10 it says, make the hearts of these people fat. What does a message, when it comes, what does it do to the people? It makes their hearts fat. What does the fatness have to do with anything anyway? Listen to what it says. Make their hearts fat and make their ears heavy. They cannot hear. And shut their eyes, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and be converted and be healed. This is what Jesus Christ is quoting in the previous verse. It says, lest they should see. So what is God doing here? Here in verse 11 of Isaiah chapter 6, continuing, it says, then I, the Lord, I asked the Lord this question, how long am I going to do this, right? Isaiah says, okay, I'm going to bear this message. I'm going to go out there and talk to these people and tell them exactly what you have given me for them to hear. But how long am I going to do this? This is a true watchman. It says, how long? In Isaiah chapter 6, verse 11, it says, and he answered and says, until the cities be wasted without inhabitants, and the house be without no man, and the land be utterly desolate. So this is how long you're going to preach. Until the world goes back to its tohu or bohu, to be without form and void, Genesis chapter 1, until it goes back to that state, until there's this final desolation, the utter desolation among God's people. You preach on, you continue bearing a message. So there's this thing that is mentioned. It says, make the hearts of thy people in verse. I want to go back now. I want to be a little bit slow so that I bring out a point, right? It says this. Listen to what it says. In Isaiah chapter 6, verse 10, it says, make the hearts of these people fat. So the fatness, remember we talked about how the Nazarene is lean. Okay, there's no fat. The skin is cleaving to the what? To the bones. And we know what the bone is in the Bible. When it talks about the bone in the Bible, it's the etzam in the Hebrew, and it's the word eternal or substance. So the skin begins to cleave to the bone, the substance, who is Jesus. The skin is on the outside, and then the skin begins to cleave to the substance. But here we're being given a picture of what the message that Isaiah is going to bear and what it's going to do to the people. It says here, it says, make their hearts of these people fat. They're going to have a fat heart. So the fatness in the Bible, when it talks about fat, remove the fat from the sacrifice, fat is a representation of sin itself. It's the corrupted thing altogether, right? Listen to what it says. The fatness is deadly. There's a deadliness associated with the fatness. Now, let's look at this fatness reality and let's equate it to what's happening to God's people. Listen to what it says. Deuteronomy chapter 32. What's fascinating about Deuteronomy chapter 32 is that the whole chapter is the Song of Moses. Why the Song of Moses? Remember, we're talking about the Songs of Songs. And we're being told that those that are going to be redeemed are going to sing the Song of Moses and the Lamb. So I'm reading from the Song of Moses. Listen to what it says about the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy. I'm just picking verses. I could spend time reading the whole thing and trying to show you the essence of that chapter, but I'm not going to do that right now. Right now, I just want to show you the fatness. Here it says in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 16, I'm going to read about 3 verses from there, from 15, to 17. It says, but Jehosham or Joram wax fat. Now, that word is going to be essential. Let's see if we can get the pronunciation of this word. Let's go back. Okay, let's see. Where am I? It says, but Josharam waxed fat and kicks. So this is a picture that it says Josharam, what does he do? He waxed fat, he becomes fat and begin to kick against the gods. There's an expression in the Bible about that. It says, thou art waxed fat, thou hast grown thick, thou hast been covered with fatness. Now remember, the Nazarene that we come under, who is Jesus, is not fat. But here is a group of people who are called the Jerusalem. You see what that name means and who it represents. It says they have become fat and they kick, they've become wax fat and they've grown thick, they've been covered with fatness. It says, then they have forsaken God which made them. After they have become fat, what have they done? They have forsaken God who has made them and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. Now, the deadliness of being fat is that it leads to forsaking God and lightly esteeming the rock of salvation. I don't mean Johnson the rock, but I mean Jesus the rock of salvation. Lightly esteem him. Yeah, I know Jesus and all this, and we can do other things. Yeah, there's Jesus, but you see, there's all these things. And this is what happened to God's people, to Israel. Rightly esteeming Jesus. Jesus came like, hey, who is this guy? Who you're born out of wedlock? Who are you? We don't know about your birth. Who is your father? We are of our father. The Pharisees and all that. They had that mentality against Jesus, rightly esteeming him when God poured himself out there in form of his son Jesus. It says, listen to what it says in verse 16. It says, because they have rightly esteemed the rock of his salvation, verse 16 of 32, Deuteronomy, it says, they provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations provoking him to anger. Because they've rightly esteemed Jesus. And this is what we're seeing in the churches today. We highly esteem our pastors. We highly esteem our institution, our churches, our buildings and all this. But there is no Jesus rightly esteeming. There's a low esteem of who Jesus Christ is. We don't hold him in high esteem anymore. We hold everybody else, if it's our bishops, our papas, our priests, our pastors, whoever, our CONs, whoever they are, we hold them in high esteem more than we hold Jesus in high esteem. And it shows. We listen to them more than we read our Bibles. We spend more time listening to them, and it's what my pastor said. It's what this guy said. It's what this one said. It's not about Jesus anymore. And that is leading to the provoking of his jealousy with strange gods, because these people are introducing to you strange gods. And that provokes the wrath of God, the 7 last plagues. And this is what his people are going to do. Verse 17, it says, they sacrificed unto devils. Wow. The sacrifices that we offer are unto devils. We think we are offering unto God, but we are actually offering unto how many things do we sacrifice? Look at our lives. How much time we spend doing whatever we're sacrificing unto who? Devils. It says devils, not to God. To gods whom they knew not. To new gods that have come up newly. It says, whom their fathers feared not. If you go back into the Old Testament and see Abraham, they didn't worship all those gods, but we right now are worshiping those gods. It says, who has done this? Jehoram. And Jehoram is the word upright one. It's the chosen one of God. It's the symbolic name for Israel. So Israel is the one that has waxed what? Fat. God is speaking. He's not speaking to the Philistines, the Jebusites, the Moabites, the Edomites. He's not speaking to all these mites. He's speaking to his people, a specific group of people. And you will know them. And God says they have done this. They're sacrificing to devils. They're worshiping devils. They're not worshiping me. And they're provoking me to what? Anger. These are the daughters of Jerusalem that could not see who God is. But this woman in Songs of Songs chapter 5, this Shulamite, they ask her a question, who is your beloved more than any other? She is able to see, but they don't. They were the natural branch. Remember, these are the children of Israel. They are the daughters of Israel. Compared to this woman, she is an outcast. She is a Shulamite, for God's sake. She is a darkened Bedouin woman who works in the field, being darkened by the sun, blackened there, and all. That's her reality. But you are the fairest of all. And you even mock her and say, who is your beloved more than any other? And there's the jealousy that comes up because she loves Solomon more than they do. And because he has chosen her, they have a jealousy towards her. They are the natural branches, but they could not see his beauty, just like Lucifer. Now, I'm going much more deeper into the study to show you the danger of being part of the people that are lightly esteeming who God is. Listen, just like Lucifer in heaven, Lucifer was, his name means light bearer, the one who bore the light of God, the one who was a covering cherub in the very presence, overlooking at the presence of God, the one who bore the light from him and give it to others. Lucifer, he couldn't see and accept Jesus Christ for who he was. He couldn't accept him because Jesus Christ is eternally humble in heaven. He appears to be mingling around others, and why should he get the homage of angels and enter into the councils of God? Why don't I? Look at me. I am more beautiful. I'm more lovely. I'm all this. I'm all the sum of all these angels. I have all this influence. Why should he get the preeminency? This is the same jealousy that these daughters of Jerusalem are exhibiting towards this woman. Who is your beloved? Who is this beloved? So you see, they couldn't see it and accept Jesus. And Israel of old. I've always said, read Desire of Ages chapter 2, because Desire of Ages chapter 2 will give you a picture of what they did when they were given the treasures of heaven. And it will give you a picture of what God's people are doing during this time when they have been given the treasures of heaven. So Israel of old and even Israel right now are blind, and this is going to cause about the abomination that causes desolation. Listen to what Luke says. Continuing our study. Listen to what Luke says. In Luke chapter 13, verse 35, it says, you see, your house is left unto you desolate. And assuredly, this is Jesus speaking. Listen, if you can't believe me, at least believe the words of Jesus. Jesus is speaking, and he's about to go to Calvary. And these people, who are the preeminent people, who are the holy people, the so-called righteous people, the Pharisees and the scribes and all these people, he's speaking to them. He says, your house has been left unto you desolate. Why? Why is there desolation amongst God's people? Why are God's people participating in a desolation of the house? Listen, it says, surely I say unto you, it says, and you shall not see me until the time cometh when you shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. So Jesus Christ, even in Matthew chapter 22, when he gives those rebukes in Matthew chapter 22, he's crying, he calls them out for who they are. And then in the end, he says, you shall not see me anymore. And he walks out of the temple, and the glory of the Lord departs from the temple forever from Israel. He departs, he goes out. He departs. And this is the picture. This is for the children, the daughters of Jerusalem, who cannot see how beautiful the beloved is, who have even who even dare to question. It says, who is your beloved? The same mentality of Pharaoh. When he says, who is God that I should worship? When he was fat. This is what has happened to God's people. They don't know who God is. Joel chapter 2 verse 3, it says, and the fire devoureth them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the land of who? It's like the Garden of Eden before them, but behind them a desolate wilderness. Surely nothing shall escape. This is a picture of them. They came from this beautiful picture of a land that is like what? Eden. But now there's desolation from where they're coming from. Jeremiah chapter 2, giving us the same reality of these children of Israel, of these daughters of Jerusalem. Jeremiah chapter 2 verse 21, it says, yet I have planted a noble vine. It's him. It's his planting. These are his people. It's his garden. He has planted a noble vine, a seed of the highest quality. These are my people. I planted them. It says, he continues, it says, how then have you turned before me into a degraded plant of an alien, strange vine? It says, you've become strange. It's the same thing. Listen, it's the same thing that happened to Lucifer. God says in Ezekiel, it says, how art thou fallen? How have you fallen? You were way up there in my very presence. How is it that you've fallen? How is it that you, who is the sum of all the angels, you have fallen? How? How have you become estranged? How is it that there is iniquity found in you? How? Like, you cannot make sense of it. This is the picture of the daughters of who? That pose the question. The daughters of Jerusalem. But from the Shulamite, God says this to her. Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 35. It says, so they will say, this land which was desolate has become like what? Like the Garden of Eden. So she was desolate. She's the black one. She's the rejected one. She is the outcast one. But she's the land that is desolate, that was going to become as Eden in him. He calls her my garden. You see, it's his garden. He says, my garden is, he begins to describe her in the previous studies that we did. He calls her this beautiful garden. He says, this is my garden. This is where I plow. You shall be as the Garden of Eden. He says, the wasted, desolate, ruined cities are now fortified and inhabited. This is what he does for this woman who was desolate, who was wasted, who was black, who was all these things. He says, now you're going to be fortified in me, and I'm going to inhabit you. Unless we go through the desolation of our souls right now through the work of the Holy Spirit, we shall forever participate in the actual desolation that is going to happen amongst God's people. God says, I want my people to go through their heart's desolation by accepting the blackness of who they are. And once they have gone through that, then I'm going to take them to Eden. I will turn them into these beautiful gardens of Eden, where I will dwell therein, and they will find rest in me. The Shulamite describes the beloved as white and ruddy and chiefest among 10,000. I'm asking myself, can we describe Jesus Christ as that? Can you describe your lover as that? the lover of our soul? Can we be lovesick for him? I wonder. We'll do part 2 next week. Thank you for joining me.